All right, this week on the Dragzine podcast, I have an interesting character here, Mr. Scott Woodruff. Scott, what's going on?
Doing great. Just got in from shoveling some snow up here in northern Ohio. So about the only one that was having fun was the dog frolicking around in the snow and trying to find her toy. But yeah, no, everything's good.
I feel your pain. I just got back from the U.S. Street Nationals where it was, nice and comfortable. I was just wearing a light jacket and I land in Columbus. I'm like, oh, great, there's snow. I get
Oh
home,
yeah,
it starts snowing more. I'm like, welcome back to reality, my friend. Welcome back to reality.
that's it. That's it.
But the cool thing, though, is that the U.S. Street Nationals means we're getting a little bit closer to some NHRA racing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I watch all kinds of racing and pay attention to everything. So when the Rolex 24 is going, to me, it's I mean, it's on,
That's the funny thing about like with racers in general is we use like certain dates and certain events as like markers. It's like, oh, that's on. Well, I got to start getting ready a little bit quicker. It's about go time.
Yeah, I've actually enjoyed this. Having as far as the NHRA, the start of the Camping World Series kind of pushed back. It hadn't been quite the fire drill for me. Everything's been laid out, and so I'm definitely looking forward to it, getting going, and we'll start our season obviously at the Door Slammer Nationals, and can't wait.
Kind of going off of that, it's a great way to transition to this question. You have what many would consider a dream job. How did you end up in this position? Tell people what you do and what you do each day, because to me, it's kind of interesting.
Well, my official role is director of media and motorsports for JEGS. Um, Long story short, Jeg Jr. and I have been childhood friends since sixth grade. His older brothers bought us beer when we were in high school. So there's kind of a weird working dynamic for me, but I've worked there over 23 years, and they've always given me the tools to do the job at hand. And previously, I did a lot of investment work where I would manage large sums of money, $14-15 million a year, do estate planning, a lot of individual investing, and then benefit as far as health insurance, 401k, and that kind of thing. And JEGS was actually one of my larger clients in Central Ohio. And I remember I was getting burned out on the whole compliance part of the business. And at that time, I was flying into the races, having fun, I was just hanging out, helping out where I could, helping out my buddy and helping out his brothers. And when I came to Jag and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing something different, he's like, hey, what do you think about coming to work for us? I'm like, I don't know if I can work for my best friend. I don't know if that's going to work. But a couple weeks later, we sat down again, and he said, seriously, we'd like you to come work for us. What do you want to make? And I'll never forget this, but I like wrote, he said, well, what do you want to make? And I wrote it on a piece of paper and just kind of slid it across the desk. And he's like, well, that's more than what I was thinking. And I'm like, well, that's what you're supposed to say, And he's like, he's like, all right, let's just do it. And I said, all I ask is that you give me a year to figure this thing out, and they've been they're a great family. It's a great business. I've seen all the kids, I've known them all since they were born, So, I've given scooter rides at the racetrack, gotten worn out by little Jaggy or Troy Jr. when they're just, teeny tiny kids like, Uncle Woody, you got to take us on a scooter ride, and that's been pretty cool. But so, the fun thing is that they all know that whatever we talk about doesn't go anyplace else. So at this point, there's 12 grandkids, and at this point, 6 or 7 of them have, done the same exact thing. They walk into my office, they shut the door, and it's kind of like a replay every single time. I'm like, what'd you shut the door for? Well, nothing. I'm like, what's up? Well, what do you think my mom and dad would think about this? And this ends up being, whatever idea somebody has or whatever. And that's been really cool. I mean, really, really cool. I probably work the closest with Troy Jr. as far as a third generation, just because he's really active in the racing. And then also J3, we call him Jeg the third. And he's, he recently, he graduated from Ohio State, big golfer, wanted to be a pro golfer, went down that, kind of went down that path, and had some and still has some amazing mentors, Jason Day, people like that he gets to play golf with that have, really helped him. And his conversation was interesting because he's like, hey, man, I really think I want to come work at JEGS. I'm like, really? I'm like, you're going to give up on the golfing, all the time and energy that you put into this? And he's like, I think it's a great opportunity, and I want to help have the place grow. So, what I always tell the kids and what I tell anybody is, you got to have a game plan and map out the game plan on, what you want to do, what your responsibilities will be, and so forth. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun to see those guys and gals excel at what they're doing. So
I think it's interesting because it puts a different, like the way you explain it is it puts like a more, I guess, human, like side to multi-generational racing, because a lot of people think they're born, they get a helmet, they get a fire suit, they get plopped in the car, and that's it. And that's far from the truth when you get to really know some of these families.
yeah, no, it really is. I mean, it's, I go back to, Jeg Sr., who's been an amazing, one of my mentors. And, he used to tell the boys when they wanted to come work at JEGS, like, nah, you need to go work someplace else, And for instance, John Coughlin, who's the oldest of the four Coughlin brothers, he went on the road with Daryl Gwynn for a year and worked on his alcohol car, top fuel car, whatever it was at the time. And I think finally he called his dad wherever he was, like, Dad, this is cool, but I want to come back and I want to work at JEGS, So I think it's almost like Jeg Sr. and, purposely pushes away, with the idea being that, hey, they're going to come back,
Yeah. They shall return at one point after they figure out what they really want to do. As the director of media and motorsports marketing, what are some things that you do that might surprise some people? Because that's a kind of an interesting title that I'm guessing probably you wear a whole lot of hats.
I do. If it has to do with any of our racing somewhere, it goes through my hands. We've got a great group of people that work in the race shop. We've got an amazing group of associates that work, next door at JEGS headquarters. We've got a business that's built on passion, So whether somebody's in the warehouse and they're packing boxes, or they're in accounting, or they're in advertising, or they're in purchasing, I mean, everybody is a car enthusiast or an automobile enthusiast, and that it really, just the culture of it's pretty amazing. But my days are never the same. Whether it's a pro board conference call, or, I'm on the NHRA contingency committee. I talk to Glenn Cromwell probably weekly. And then I oversee our bracket racing, just really everything, with the idea that, we try and do everything the JEGS way, is what I call it. I look at everything as a stage that you get to control, and what racing teaches you is that there's really only two things that you can control in racing, and it's how prepared you are and your attitude. And that we use that same methodology throughout the business and everything else. So
Now, on the race team side of things, do you help out like with the logistics and getting trucks and people to where they need to be?
Yeah. We talked through that a lot. For instance, we're going to have a test session here in West Palm, and right now we got, Jeg wants to take 3 cars, Mike wants to take 3 cars, Paige wants to take hers, TJ wants to take hers, McKenna wants to take hers. Like, guys, we got 3 rigs. Let's be honest here. Not all this stuff is going to fit, but somehow we always find a way to make it work. And the group in the race shop is really dedicated, and they don't really need babysat. I'm in there 1 or 2 times a week. I've got an office in the shop, and it's just fun. I mean, I really, the guys lean on me if they have questions, if they need something. But for the most part, they get it done. And I've driven the motorhomes and the trailers up and down the road in the late 90s. And so me personally, I won't ask anybody to do anything that I haven't done myself. And there's a lot of respect within our 4 walls at the race shop because of that.
I was interested on the logistics side of things because I've been involved in logistics and trying to move trailers to where they need to go, get people where they need to go. I've driven rigs myself. I know what it's like. And that's like one of the cool behind the scenes things that people don't realize. You put it the best. Everybody wants something to show up to the track. And you're like, listen, we only have a 10-pound box.
Yeah.
You're asking for 50. I can probably do 20 at best. Let's figure something out.
Yeah.
And that usually is where there's a lot of horse trading and bartering and people don't understand like the organization skills that are required to make that stuff happen.
No, it's pretty amazing. And don't get me wrong, I've had my calls at like 3:30 in the morning where somebody's traveling across country, and we got new credit cards, for example. And these latest cards, I think this is like 5 years ago. Every once in a while requires like a 4-digit PIN. And so it's like 3:30 in the morning, and I get this call, and somebody's trying to fill up a rig, and they're like, man, this thing's asking for a PIN. I'm like, dude, just put 9999 in there. Just see. Sure enough, it works. It just needed 4 numbers, But I've had odd situations where, Randy Bishop, who drives Jeg Jr.'s coach and trailer for all the sportsman stuff, we had a DOT issue, out on the West Coast swing 1 year. Yeah, it was horrid. And it was like, I want to say it was between Sonoma. It was between Sonoma and Seattle. And, at this time, everything was just yellow and black, had big JEGS on the side and JEGS.com and an 800 number on the back door. And, he's in a private coach, so he just goes right by the scales. And sure enough,
DOT does
it's kind of a gray area. So the guy pulls him over and says, hey, how come you didn't stop back there? He says, like, well, I'm not a commercial vehicle. I'm a private carrier. It was a private motorhome. And he says, well, sorry to tell you, but it says JEGS on there. It's got an 800 number and a website. You're commercial, So that was an odd thing to fix. And I think that happened in Oregon, and he was 350 miles away from the track, and they wouldn't let him move. They wouldn't let the 2 move together. So we talked through, and this is like 2:30 in the morning. I said, okay. I'm like, just get it towed, get the trailer towed and hook it back up before you pull into the track. And I'll organize getting a vinyl company to come out, and we'll just cover up the JEGS and all that stuff. And we did, and that worked out. But Yeah, like I said, I never know what the next day is going to bring for me, which is pretty cool. I look at racing, whether it's on the track or off the track, it's competitive problem solving, you know?
It's what I tell people. My job can be fun and terrifying all at the same time because you literally never know what's going to happen, and you have to figure it out. Like you said, just like drag racing, sometimes you got to figure it out on the fly.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. But that's part of the reward really to me. I mean, I really, I'm a very organized person. And I've always take the approach to try and have everything organized that I know I can control, because I know no matter what event it is, there's something that's going to pop up that I don't know. So the more issues that I can resolve and have organized and have in place before the unknowns come up, the better.
I always try to like when you are trying to move any kind of race vehicle, or when you're a race team and you're at the track with like a heads up car, you have to have multiple plans for plans for plans because you never know what's going to happen. And you have to be also be able to, you have to have certain levels of contacts because you never know when you're going to have to call in a favor from a competitor or a sponsor, someone else be, hey, so this kind of happened. Can you help us out?
Yeah, yeah, I know. Like, this is a good example. Like, I don't know what year it was, but when Jeg was running for Victor Cagnazzi in the Slammers car, they kind of fizzled away at the last minute between races, and the next race was Bristol the following week, and you know I had to get a car rebranded. I had to get crew shirts. I had to get fire suit. I had to get awning, all this stuff. And I mean, I pulled some amazing favors
Yeah.
to get this done in about 6 days. And unfortunately, we didn't race at Bristol because I think they had a track issue and they postponed the race. But I was bummed because I'm like, yeah, I busted butt to get all this stuff done, and it didn't happen. I didn't need
Yeah.
to.
But
But
at the same time, you're just like, well, at least I know I can do it if I have to.
exactly, exactly.
Now you've kind of had a front row seat to see a lot of history made with the Coughlin family. Championships and all kinds of incredible things have happened. What's that been like to be a part of it in the position you're in, being so close to them and still working for them? What's that kind of like?
It's pretty neat. There's been a lot of times, and really this past year, specifically since Jeg, announced his retirement and retired really from professional racing. But, um, you know, there's been a couple times that I've told him, I wish that you could have seen, you're in the car, you don't get to see all that. My favorite win of his was when he won the Hemi Challenge in Indy. On Friday night, I want to say it was like 04, 05, 06, somewhere in there. But, I'm looking around, I'm on the starting line, stands are packed, you know, all the legends of our sport that are at the event are on the starting line, sitting on the walls, watching these, 3,800-pound cars do a big wheelie for the final. And I mean, he leaves and, it's just flash, 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 flash. And ultimately he ended up winning that. But I told him, if I could ever trade spots with you, not that I want to drive, but that's the one that I would have liked to have him see through my eyes, because I think he would have been just blown away. And all of the Coughlins, whether it's the 4 boys or the 12 grandkids or Jeg Senior, everybody's amazingly down to earth and very grounded. Kenny Laughlin is just, he's blown away at how approachable Jeg is. It's just like one of his buddies. And that part's neat. It's really neat.
I think you said something there. It's very interesting that when you're in that position, it's hard to explain. When you get to like witness history often, and you're not the center of it, but you're there kind of is a part of the moment. And especially when you're really tied to what's happening, it's It's surreal. It really, really is.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of times, I mean, if it's one of our drivers has a great run, and I very rarely do I go to the top end after a run. Um, but I always do if in the final, if somebody wins or they get beat, or if somebody red lights, and there's been some really cool moments where we've had drivers red light, and not that that's cool, because it's not.
No, no, it's bad feeling, bad feeling.
Yeah, but I try and be the first one down there to just say, hey, let's go to the next one. Let's just erase this. It happens. And there's been some really cool pictures that some of my media friends have taken of Jag and I, Troy Jr. and I, John, Mike, Troy, just with my arm around him, just saying, hey man, we got this. Let's move on to the next one.
Out of the entire Coughlin like pride, we'll call it, it's like a pride of Lions. Who is the most like competitive one out of all of them? Brothers, grandkids, the whole deal. The one that you're just like, wow, that they're intense. They're wound tight.
Troy Jr., hands down. Jag is, but he's a little bit more reserved about it. But Troy Jr. is, he's the kid that grew up on the fence, watching his dad, watching his uncles race, always wanting to do this. And, he's definitely his hardest critic. I mean, when he raced the Top Fuel car, unfortunately that didn't really work out the way that it should have, for a variety of reasons, but it wasn't because of a lack of effort, and it wasn't because of him, but he ended up being really the scapegoat, in that. And he gets occasionally, he'll see stuff on social media, somebody bashing him or whatever, and he really, he takes it to heart. And I'm just like, dude, you got to quit looking at that. His wife said an amazing thing to him and I one time, and said, how come everything that, people everybody loves Jag, but then they beat on you, and it's like, it's just a different thing.
What I find interesting about Junior is that he has found some level of success in everything that he has jumped behind the wheel of, which when you look at all the different vehicles that he's driven, from bracket, sportsman, all the way up to the Top Fueler, that is a huge, huge range of vehicles that a lot of people don't realize that you have to have a certain skill set. And when you talk to the racers that drive those cars, there's Top Fuel guys that will flat tell you, I will never get in a pro mod. Those cars are terrifying. And, it's interesting. And now he's in pro stock. And I mean, it really shows that he is very, very versatile what he does.
Yeah. And I mean, this kid, the pro stock thing really, he thought he would never get a chance to do that, because he just, when we got rid of our in-house program, in the early or mid 2000s, he was always told, hey, it ain't gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. Just get it out of your head. You're not gonna get to drive one of these. And to see him get to do that, I mean, he wears me out asking for in-car footage. He doesn't care when it comes from, whether it's the late 90s all the way to present. He's a real, he's a very much kind of an introvert, in that he's watching video. He wants to see graphs. He tries to rewind in his head what happened, and so forth. And, he's gonna be a champion. He's gonna win a lot of races, and it's gonna be exciting.
It's interesting, the passing of the torch to him with the elite camp, with the JEGS being hooked up with them. Like, elite is literally the murderer's row of like in-house pro stock cars right now. Like, when you look at just the pure driver standpoint, with the people they have there between Alex Laughlin, now TJ and Eric Enders, and they're all young and they all have won at some level. I mean, that's got to be a dream come true across the board for everybody involved.
It really is. I mean, and don't forget Aaron Stanfield.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's won a little bit too.
Yeah, he's done okay. But Bruno Massel, he'd be a good guy to talk to because he's been, he's driven. He's very humble about it because he knows how hard that it is. But he just, everybody rallies around each other to help whoever. Eric has turned out to be a phenomenal teacher as far as people getting their license. She helped a lot with Marty Robertson. She helped a lot with Bruno. She helped, she's done a really good job. Now, Troy Jr., obviously, he's got quite a bank to go back onto and talk to his dad and his uncles and different situations. And he's asked a lot of questions. I mean, a lot of questions. And I think it his performance and his desire and, it's awesome to see that type of success. And the group at Elite, I mean, it's as close to having our own in-house program as you could have. I mean, really everybody does get along very well. Richard Freeman's done an amazing job getting together the talent pool that we have, and there's no egos, there's no attitudes. I mean, it's just, let's work together, let's make this happen.
It's going to be fun to watch him progress in particular, because he's driven so many what I would call sledgehammers with the Pro Mod, the fuel car, the A fuel car. He's done some precision stuff with the bracket stuff, but not to the level. Like, people just, it never ceases to amaze me that people don't understand how just surgical you have to be with a pro stock, because if you're not perfect throughout a run, it's going to cost you a number somewhere. And as tight as that class is, you're going home.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting when I take people through the trailer that have, whether they're friends of ours or guests, and you show them, all the technology that goes into this, and you show them, when you show somebody a graph with shift points and they're all just almost just a straight line, the top all the way across. I mean, that's, you can't be 100 RPM off, and you could be 50, but you can't be 100. It's definitely a game of precision.
This weekend at the U.S. Street National, as I was getting ready to interview a crew chief, and he was finishing up going over some data, and it's funny to see different graphs of different data from different cars, and like an NA car versus a pro-charged Pro Mod is like, you can just tell looking at the data that those are two very, very different experiences and what you have to do as a driver.
Yeah, like Troy Sr., he's driven a blown Pro Mod car, turbo, and nitrous. So when you talk to him, he can, he tells you how each of them feel different. Whereas his favorite car is just the turbo, because he says you were just pinned back in the seat the whole time. And he was trying to tell TJ when TJ transitioned to pro stock, like, hey, it's going to be a lot different. You're going to be really surprised when you launch, because it's going to be hard on your body, but then down track, it's no big deal.
It's not like you're getting hit with a bag full of doorknobs for an entire 5 seconds. It's an initial hit, but then it calms down. Like you said, with the Turbo Pro Mod, Alex Laughlin said, there's the hit at the launch, you're pushed. Then he said about the 8th mile, when those turbos are a full tilt boogie, he said it's like you launch again, and you're constantly, you have to be on edge the whole time, because you don't know when that car's going to decide it wants to make a left turn, right turn, or maybe move sideways at one time.
Yeah, and Troy brought up a point a couple months ago. We had a relationship with Mid Ohio Sports Car Course where once a year we would go out there and about 24 of us in their school cars with 5 belt harnesses and helmets and XM radio and have a good time for the day. And one of our good friends, Tommy Byrne, who's a former F1 driver, he told Troy, he says, and Troy took this to heart, and it helped him amazingly in pro mod, because he said, it would be interesting. You should think about your steering wheel and gas pedal like there's a line between, like there's a rope. So if you turn the wheel, you should take off the gas, and he started doing that. And I mean, he could get down tracks or situations where most people would have aborted, just because he took that to heart, and he brought that principle from a different form of driving and adapted it to what he was doing.
Speaking of relationships, we have some great ones here on the Dragzine podcast, and one of them was Airflow Research. Airflow Research is the original CNC ported cylinder head. From street enthusiast to the hardcore racer, AFR has designed a cylinder head for your application with one goal in mind: just to go fast. Which ties right into that, like you said, that mindset of going fast and doing whatever you you get that mindset. You take I think that's a sign of a good driver, is they take good coaching and they absorb it and they apply it that, like, quickly, and they learn from it.
Yeah. No, it is neat.
Now, Pro Stock had an obituary written for it by a lot of people, and it started to bounce back. And in my opinion, it's great racing. Some people say it's cookie cut. Like, to me, it's great racing to watch because of how close it is. From your perspective, what has helped that resurgence?
I would say the number one thing that's helped the resurgence is, obviously the class. What most people don't know is behind the scenes, it was all but pretty much fading out. And they were kind of, as far as the sanctioning body, was kind of letting it happen. And when Richard Freeman, myself, Greg Anderson, we all got on the phone and said, hey, we need to get everybody on the same page. There's strength in numbers here. Let's all work together. And we did that a couple years ago, and it really has helped. NHRA has done a very good job of overseeing the technical aspect of it. A lot of times we don't agree. I don't agree with some of the decisions they make, but I try and put a different hat on, in every situation I look at. I try and have a hat for the JEGS organization, a hat for the racer, a hat for the sponsor, a hat for the race team, and look at all this. And, bringing the RPM level down, saved a quarter, some people say it saved $250,000 on valve springs a year, going from 12.5 to 10 grand on the RPM. We just need to have good side-by-side racing at the end of the day. And seeing people like Troy Jr., McGahe's son, Chris McGahe's son, I can't think of his name right now, but there are a lot of younger guys that are getting into this. A lot of the Quadra family. I mean, it's, I look at, specifically Pro Stock is full of a lot of, owner driver entrepreneurs. Okay. Monday through Friday, they own big businesses. They solve problems every day. You cannot turn that off on the weekend. So I think that's kind of why these classes appeal to a lot of entrepreneurs, is that, they want to do something that challenges them on the weekend. They can't just turn it off and go golfing and show back up Monday morning, or fishing is probably a better example, because golf is pretty competitive. But it takes a neat mindset to be able to do that.
For me, I try to explain to people, I tie it to a comp eliminator a lot because comp eliminator is like the rocket scientists of drag racing, where they take a rule book and they're like, all right, I want to fit into here. How do I do it? Oh, let's take a old pro stock motor, let's saw it in half, put a weird crank in it, and go do it. You know,
Yeah.
whereas
Like the
pros,
Aragon, like Aragonas, you know?
yeah, like I'll see some of these combinations in comp, and I'll be like, how did you think of this? And it's amazing. And pro stock in that sense is the same, like you said, it's problem solving because you're limited on what you can run, the cubic inch. You don't have a power adder to provide the atmosphere. It's not a nitro car where you're trying to calm it down too much. You are trying to optimize literally everything from the front splitter to where the parachute's mounted to make this car go fast. And you're tied in with a lot of smart people that's all they want to do. They want to problem solve.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And it's you know, that we all take great pride when we do well. We all take great pride in motivation when somebody else does well. There's nothing I hate more personally than seeing a KB car win, period. Just, you know, I just don't. Probably it's a little bit more of an embedded rivalry in my blood, but we want to win on the track just as much as we want to win off the track. And the nice thing about the class is, there's a lot of camaraderie within the class. And you've heard this. I mean, we only really want to kill each other for, 8 seconds, but at the end of the day, it's the people that really make all that happen.
My camera guy this weekend at the US Street Nationals for the on-air stuff, never been around drag racing, and he seems like, man, all these people seem like friends, but then they race. I said, listen, everybody's your friend until you got 3 bulbs lit. And then your goal is, within that next however long that race is, you're going to do everything you can to send them home. And then
Yeah.
afterwards, you're friends again.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some Lance McGrew over at Hendrick. He's overseeing the R&D program over there, and he's been a friend for a number of years. And when he likes coming to the NHRA races specifically because of pro stock, but he says it reminds him a lot of the way NASCAR used to be. Like everybody got along, everybody, but yet they raced.
Now, switching gears a little bit here, you're part of pro. So I want to break down to our viewers and listeners, kind of what pro is, how you became involved with it, and what your role is. So I guess first off, start off to set the table. What is pro?
Pro is the professional racers organization. It's made up of top fuel, funny car, and pro stock teams and drivers. Board members are elected, and I showed an interest in wanting to be involved with that. Don Schumacher and I are good friends, and he said, hey, I think you'd be good at doing this on behalf of pro stock. So right now, Greg Anderson and I are the two pro stock reps. So, we talk through rule changes, we talk through payouts, we talk through insurance, we talk through costs, we talk through really safety, a lot of safety. Matter of fact, we looked at a couple different tracks to do the nitro test, preseason test here, and you just really kind of, safety is the number one reason why we're there. So a lot of decisions we kind of need to step back and then really kind of make safety the priority. Payouts are important, and it's really just a unified voice for the race teams and racers to the sanctioning body, so that really the idea is that you could have individual team owners and drivers and crew chiefs all calling NHRA, giving their opinion, and this really gets a way to filter those opinions and have a solid stance and present those.
So really, I guess the Cliff Note summary is that pro is the racers' ally. You guys are the advocates for the racers with the sanctioning bodies or sanctioning body to make sure that the best decisions for everybody can be made.
Correct. Yep. Yep. And it's a lot like, it's a lot like student council in high school on
Yeah,
steroids, I guess, but
with millions of dollars.
yeah, with millions of dollars, and that's, and that's another thing. Like, a lot of the rule changes, you know, we'll have conversations about things about nitro classes and what NHRA wants to do long term. And, in a perfect world, let's change the platform to this so that, alcohol dragster and top fuel, with a couple minor adjustments, alcohol dragster could go run top fuel for a couple races. Well, you talk to the top fuel team owner who has, all of these assets and all of this engine technology lined up. He didn't want that to be, obsolete, because that becomes a big investment to move forward. So, it's really, again, it's just everybody being on the same page. Alan Johnson's the president. He does an amazing job. He is, he's very dedicated to it. He's very outspoken, but he's, he listens. He listens a lot and takes all that in.
Something you just said really, it opened up for a question I want to ask, and I'm sure there's only so much you could potentially reveal. Was it a year or two ago that there was a talk that, oh, we might start doing some quarter mile racing for nitro cars? And I was like, that's an interesting double-edged sword. And I talked to a team, I'm not going to say which team, and the driver's reaction was, I would absolutely love to do that. And then he put the biggest, however, yeah, but he said the amount of money it would cost us to do, it wouldn't be worth it because, you have to, like, everything needs adjusted and the fans clamor for it. And the NHRA was like going, maybe we could do this. And, I'm sure pro had to go, oh, hold on a second, guys. Let's talk about this a bit.
Yeah. And again, logistically and technology, I mean, you look at like when they had a rev limit, their rev limiter, I think it's 10,000. I don't know what theirs is, to be honest, but
It blows up.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. That's true. But 1,000 feet and 1,320 feet is a big difference.
Which a lot of people do not understand. They think, oh, it's only 320 feet. It's like, it's more than that.
And honestly, where that changed was because of safety. Some of a track like Englishtown, which we don't race at obviously anymore, but that had a pretty short shutdown area.
Or trails.
And you add 320 feet to that shutoff area, you can make better decisions. You can slow the car down easier. Me personally, I think 1,000 feet is great because the finish line's closer to the fans in the stands. And that's what we're all there for, is to entertain the fans. I think it's provided better side-by-side racing, not having that additional 320 feet, because you're living on the edge. That last 320 feet is, I haven't seen a stat, but it would be interesting to see the difference of side-by-side racing from a quarter mile to 1,000 feet. And my opinion is probably there's better side-by-side racing to 1,000 feet.
Not to mention, I mean, realistically with those cars, it's just easier on parts, because when you're making a full ride at 1,000 or 1,300, like even out 1,000 feet, you still see a lot of carnage, but that's another 300 feet that you've got to keep those candles lit and keep that car happy. And just it's so hard for people to understand. I think there's so much that could go wrong. So much.
They're very, very volatile cars.
Awesome to watch.
Awesome to watch. I've been fortunate. Like I warmed up Corey Mack's car years ago with the Carrier boys, good friends, and you know, I will never forget hitting the throttle on that thing on the jack stands. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I've never felt this much power. And I mean, those guys even said, hey, if you want to do a burnout, something on Monday and just do a launch, you're more than welcome to. And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. That'd be fun. After that, I'm like, no.
After that throttle wrap, you're like, you know what?
No way.
I'm good, dog. I'm good.
Exactly.
Now, something else I wanted to touch on too, because again, with the way that you're a multi-touch point person within the sport, is that the Coke situation was unprecedented in NHRA and all of motorsports, and so was the way that Camping World came in, literally via Twitter. What do you think Camping World being involved with drag racing? How's that going to further the sport now? Because there's a lot of demographic for them in there, and they're bringing a fresh set of eyes. What's your take on this?
Well, the Coca-Cola thing was unfortunate, but what came to light, a couple of weeks after is, they did away with 200 of their brands, and they really segmented their sponsorship by brand, and if you notice, like, whether it was Powerade, whether it was Full Throttle, whether it was Mellow Yellow, they were all three of those are really, I want to say, B to probably C-level brands, that it was very easy with a little bit of effort and resources to see 8%, 10% gains in shelf space and sales, because there hadn't been anything put behind it. Now, again, when they eliminated 200 of the brands, Mellow Yellow was one, there was numerous other brands. The group at Coke was awesome to deal with. Some of my favorite people in motorsports, Ben Reiling, that oversaw all of Coke Motorsports for years. I mean, he's a great friend. But transitioning to, to the camping world, I mean, you see an aerial view of a racetrack, there are an awful lot of motorhomes, and that's
a target rich environment.
A very target rich environment. And it'll be very interesting to see some of the things that they do. I think they it was amazing to see how it all came together. You saw where Twitter stuff was going back and forth between NHRA and Marcus but I have to believe he's a very smart individual. He's very good at recognizing, assets. I don't. What's the word I'm looking for? Like, an asset that can really grow. That needs a push, and I think he found that, and I think it'll be very interesting to see what they do going forward this year. They've talked about a lot of their vendors coming into the sport in different ways, which I think will be great. I mean, I really do.
There is so much opportunity, I think, across the board for everybody here. And if you look at it from a Camping World point of view, and the people that are involved with it, the companies that build these rigs, is now they might be able to really look at what racing fans want and need in a rig, and it helps them and it helps the fans, because they're already involved in circle track racing, and that's one aspect of it, but it's going to give them that perspective to go, hey, this is really, really big. We need to go all in.
Yeah. And I think, their involvement in the NASCAR Truck Series, was probably two-pronged. It was a branding approach, and it was obviously they want to hit the campgrounds. And at those three series, the least expensive one is the truck, and you're still going to get the campground. You know what I'm saying? So that was a pretty logical move. They've gone to different brands, like Gander Mountain, I think is one, and I don't know what they're doing now, to be honest, but there's going to be some neat things. I was fortunate enough to be around in the Winston era I mean, I learned a lot about branding from those guys. Probably the people I've learned the most about branding was from Winston, um, Roger Penske, and Jack Nicklaus. You know, I mean, to me, they all control a stage. You know, so Winston, whether it was given red paint to all the towers so that they use their red. And that was a goal of mine early on. I'm like, man, they got Winston red. We need to have JEGS yellow, So I finally got that done. But the anymore that you just can't be stale. You got to change with the times. You need to do things differently. Social media has really changed, sports in general. I think I think the camping world thing will be really, really cool. I mean, I think we're going to see some exciting things that'll happen. A lot of crossover. So we'll see.
You said just crossover. I'm just sitting there thinking there's so much opportunity for them to take circle track guys, put them in drag race cars for part of a dog and pony show, and vice versa. That, like you said, there's so much cross pollination ways to do that.
I mean, look at like Igloo coolers, or a lot of vendors that they have relationships with, very good relationships, long time relationships that they're going to be able to say in a boardroom, like, or a meeting, like, hey, really, we want you to go over and look at this, And I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see a lot of brands that our sport has always felt like should be involved in our sport. I think we're going to see a lot of those brands start to enter our sport.
And I think that leads into my next question here is, we see a lot of I call them like the glory day pictures of, crazy packed stands back, 60s, 70s, into the 80s and parts of the 90s at a certain point. And it was about, before we had social media in this level to consume it, was because drag racing it was a spectacle. It was on Wide World of Sports. It was the craziness and whatnot. And the NHRA has done a good job, I think, of kind of segmenting down how they do a show, because if you go to a race now, when the pros are going to run, and they stick to that schedule because people are very limited with their attention spans. What do you think the NHRA and drag racing needs to do to really get into that more, to help keep these stands even more packed, throughout the day, or just in general to keep setting these record numbers we've seen, in the past couple of years?
Well, as you know, there's nothing, I don't care how great of a home theater system you have at home, but there's nothing that duplicates being at a race.
No.
I look at it, I think drag racing, honestly, is the original extreme game. I mean, it just, everybody that we've gotten to a race that normally wouldn't go, whether they're friends of ours or vendors or acquaintances, I mean, they're blown away. I've had buddies of mine that are in the band OAR on the starting line, and I mean, they played at Madison Square Garden, packed house, and they think that it's the coolest thing in the world, and it's definitely a sensory. I think we need to promote the sensory experience of it, because that's what makes it unique from being at the event or the venue, as opposed to watching it on TV.
Yeah, and I've done surprisingly enough, the only major motorsporting event I haven't been to is a NASCAR race yet, but I've done dirt track, tractor pulls, all kinds of stuff. And yeah, like the sensory overload at a dirt track race is like this like constant thing. There's a certain level to it. But at a drag race, even if you're sitting in the highest level of the bleachers at mid track, when a nitro car goes by, it shakes your soul.
Oh, it's an attention getter without a doubt. I mean, it's amazing.
And I think it's something that, we need to do across the board to get those to start really drawing people back in. And like, there's certain markets where you're going to pack the house no matter what. They're what I call like drag racing strongholds. And it's something where we need it to be like where at Gainesville, what was 2 years ago, where they had to done, shut down. We can't let any more anybody in the property. In my opinion, every big show race should be like that, hands down.
No, that would be great. And I definitely agree with you. I mean, I go back to, if you and I told 10 of our friends, hey, you need to go to this, how many of them are going to go? Probably a pretty good amount, probably 7 to 8 of them. Same thing for the TV. I mean, that's how you get the interest. Now the TV show can be the bait that gets somebody, I want to see that. I got to experience this. And like, if you notice when they have like celebrities at the race, in the past, they've focused on that person, and the experience that they're having. We need to see more of that because that's what's going to get somebody off their couch to actually go to the venue to see an event.
And the other thing that I will give NHRA credit for now is that they are really starting to use YouTube more, which in my opinion is, I do not know why more tracks, more promoters don't use YouTube more than what they do, because it is literally, it's free. It is,
Yeah.
It only costs, we all got cell phones.
Yep.
Take a video, throw it up on there. There is, as someone that works within the racing industry, there's so much content available you can create at a racetrack. Like, I get sad because I can't do everything that I want to do. You just, even as a track owner, if you're not running the show, go out there your cell phone, burnout video. Like, there's so many ways that you could put this out there. Like, people just, they need to do it. And it's, for me, it's frustrating to not to see it, from, just a JEGS and a racing standpoint. What's your take on that?
No, I definitely agree. I mean, people consume information a lot different now than what they did 20 years ago. I mean, some of the cutting edge things that we did media wise back in the late 90s, like having, slides.
Yeah.
That you gave to, pre-written stories. And, we took it a step further, and I think we were the first ones that had a CD-ROM media kit, in all of motorsports actually. And, to where now it's, my youngest daughter's 13, and she is all about YouTube. I mean, she watches YouTube all the time. And my other daughter that's in college, if she wants to figure out how to do something, she searches it out on YouTube.
YouTube
There's
and Google.
somebody there that's taking the time to do something, and educate you in a non-threatening way, and you feel comfortable because you feel like it's a one-on-one connection, because you're only seeing the one person, and it's you and that person on the screen.
I built a kitchen table and benches for my wife. Never built anything like that before. I did it all literally. I learned it on YouTube. When I started doing the on-air stuff for Flow Racing, no formal training. I just went back and watched Brett Kettner, Steve Evans, all the classic guys. I'm like, well, how'd they do this? You go back and it's like Tom Cruise said in Days of Thunder about ESPN's coverage of sprint car or NASCAR racing. It's amazing what you can learn. That's the beauty of YouTube. It's amazing what you can learn.
It's real. And think about what you just said. I mean, that gave you, you had the ability to learn something that it just in a very quick period of time that would have taken you a lot longer to do on your own.
A Time Life book. Remember when they used to sell those Time Life books?
Yeah, right there in Encyclopedia Britannica. Yeah.
Exactly. It's the train. And I think to circle back to that with YouTube, is a track owner or an organization, you can use that to, hey, look, you can bring your street car out and go drag racing and just show someone rolling up to the starting line. It doesn't, like a truck, a pickup truck, and show them bracket racing. And, people are going to go, wait, I can do that? Yes, you could, if you want to take it and put branding on it, you have TJ driving it, and it's a JEGS truck, and it's like, hey, I'm hauling them, the parts here to the track, and I want to go racing. Boom, there you go.
Yeah, and you kind of hit something on the tracks there that a majority of our track owners are probably a little on the older side because of the investment that it takes. A majority of the tracks are, a mom and pop situation where, they got their hands full. They just want to, the social media thing is just what they need to do is just get a young kid, get an intern and let them just go nuts,
Oh,
Uh,
totally.
yeah. I mean, and that's, we've our social media, we had, when J3 came on board, he started off with that. And, I'm 52, I don't have the same mentality that somebody that's 25 has. I just don't, they grew up around the social media stuff where, I used to complain and I don't want to do this. And, but once I figured out, it's kind of like a text message, it's not any different.
Figure it out. You adapt to it.
Yep.
Well, Woody, our time here is coming to the end on the podcast, and I like to give everybody their opportunity to channel their inner John Force and thank all their sponsors and tell people where they can be found at. So I'll turn the floor over to you, and you can tell everybody where they can learn about what you guys got going on, where they can see it. So it's all you, man.
Yeah, check out jegs.com or teamjegs.com is that's actually got all of our racing. As far as social media, everything JEGS is at JEGS Performance, and give us a look. One click gets it quick. One call gets it all.
And I can attest to that because, I'm fortunate I live here in Columbus that the 11th Avenue store is only 20 minutes up the road. But there's been times I've had to order stuff online and yeah, literally 24 hours later, it shows up. It's magic. It's like,
Yeah.
I love it.
No, that's awesome. That's good to hear. And you say that with a smile. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. We're very, I know there's this other company in Ohio that I won't mention their name because it would draw the ire of you, but you're very spoiled in the world of performance racing, especially in Ohio, that you can literally build a race car between two companies that are within a few hundred miles of each other. It's amazing.
No, it's, and it's neat to see businesses that are built on passion, and obviously we're thankful that we have competition. It helps us to drive harder for the customer every day.
And that's again, when you have a company that's run by people that are in the sport, it just they understand and they go, well, I want it this way, and they do it. They understand what they want.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, Scott, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you at the track real soon.
Sounds good. See you soon.